This is not your land. It belongs to these families.
You son of a bitch. I'm gonna kill you and the Palestinians. This is my land. God gave it to me. Nazi.
Before the 2016 presidential election, some evangelical Christians began comparing Donald Trump to King Cyrus, the biblical king who's credited with allowing Jews to return to Jerusalem from exile in the Babylonian Empire. The idea behind the comparison is that a non-believing leader can be used by God to enact policies that help advance the interest of believers, in this case, Christians and Jews.
Trump upset victory divinely sent to begin messianic process, say Israeli rabbis, right? One of the rabbis illustrated how his name in the gematria, the numerology of his name actually means Messiah.
Now, we will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
I think President Trump has made history. This will be remembered the way we remember the Cyrus Declaration from 2,500 years ago when he told the exiles of Babylon, you can go back and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. This is a historic moment, and we will always remember it.
He recognizes a reality that everyone else in the West willingly blinds themselves to, and that is that Jerusalem is the one and only capital of Israel. By Trump putting his imprimatur on what has been history for the last 3,000 years, and that is that Jerusalem has been the capital of one people's country or one kingdom. That people is the Jews, and that country is and was Israel. The empires that tried to destroy Israel and its capital, Jerusalem, are long gone. Yet the Jews still speak the same language and practice the same religion, which is the foundation of our Judeo-Christian nation. Donald Trump sent Iranians, who are the descendants of Persia, a message to reflect on their own history, and that it was the king of Persia, who 1,000 years before Muhammad was even born, that said Jerusalem was the capital of the Jewish people's country. There will be no Ottoman empires or Shia nations that will destroy Jerusalem any longer. Donald Trump recognized history. He, like King Cyrus before him, fulfilled the biblical prophecy of the gods worshipped by Jews, Christians, and yes, Muslims, that Jerusalem is the eternal capital of the Jewish state, and that the Jewish people finally deserve a righteous, free, and sovereign Israel.
Do you really consider that the embassy move as just one step in the direction of building the temple?
It's a huge step. It's not just a step. It's a huge step because it is a step that is bringing together the biblical narrative, the narrative of Esav and Yaakov, the two brothers that were split thousands of years ago, are now being brought together again. And this is all part of the biblical narrative. We believe that this is a huge step to the recognition of Jerusalem, of Israel, and the rebuilding of our third temple.
How is it going to be conducted, on the same location where the Mount Sharif is?
There's only one place that it can be done in the whole world, and that is the place of the Temple Mount. That's why it's called the Temple Mount. And of course, that's where it's going to be.
So how is it going to happen?
How is it going to happen?
Yeah.
That we're going to leave part of it up to God, but I can tell you clearly that the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
This place has been a holy place since the beginning of the world and is, in essence, the center of the world. And we believe that the rock inside of the Dome of the Rock, which is called in Hebrew the Even HaShetiyah, which in English means the foundation stone, is the foundation stone of the world. That is the place from which God spread out the earth. Right now it's in the hands of the Arabs. We want to change that status to return the temple to its glory, rebuild the temple, restore the sacrificial service.
I believe that there will be a temple built. The Dome of the Rock will somehow be done away with. I have no idea. There's been plenty of earthquakes up there that could solve it. Saddam could, or not Saddam, but maybe someone from Iran could shoot a missile that gets off target and blow the Dome of the Rock. We kept hoping for that, by the way. I kept hoping one of Saddam's missiles would find its way over to the dome.
I don't know exactly how it's going to be removed, but it is not part of the end times as far as the Bible or Christianity is concerned. I don't think Judaism either. There's no place for that mosque. it has to be removed.
For the first time since the past 2,000 years within our generation, we are seeing these preparations for the rebuilding of the temple. They are training the priest. They have the implements in place.
There will be a daily offering in the morning, a daily offering in the afternoon, special offerings on the Sabbath and holidays, the Passover sacrifice. All of those will be brought again, and the future temple will stand forever.
Israel does what Israel needs to do.
During the tribulation, a Jewish temple will be standing on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. But as you know, there's not one standing there today. Rather, you have the Muslim Dome of the Rock standing there. When will the Jewish temple be rebuilt? How will it be done if the dome is still there? What would you say if I told you that there are plans and preparations underway right now to rebuild the temple in our lifetime?
And it's going to be standing there. They restore the temple sacrifices and everything else. There is one problem though, John. Everything has been prepared. They have the utensils. They have the men who've studied the priestly duties. I met recently when I was in Israel with the man who is the chairman of the Sanhedrin, the 70 wise Jewish scholars that operate the temple. He said he has his garment hanging in his closet in his home, ready to put on and report to the Temple Mount. So all the preparations have been made. There's one problem. That gold dome building, the Dome of the Rock, sits on the spot where the temple has to be erected there on the Temple Mount. And I've got to tell you, during the Gulf crisis, when I first moved to Jerusalem, we would hear the siren warning of an incoming Scud. Most of us ran into our sealed room, put on our gas mask. The Jews living in the Jewish quarter in the old city of Jerusalem ran to the Temple Mount, started to pray, "Dear God, let one of those Scuds hit the Dome of the Rock." Of course, Scud is an acronym for sure could use direction, because Saddam didn't know where they were going. But I believe that's what's going to happen. In that battle at the beginning of the tribulation period, when these nations are attacking Israel, one of their missiles is going to take down the Dome of the Rock. They put the temple up. I mean, I could just go for the next hour or two about the personalities who believe it's about to be put up. One of my dear friends, an Orthodox Jewish man named Gershon Solomon, he has the cornerstones to put on the Temple Mount to start construction of all that God said will happen during the tribulation period. All the preparations, every player I've talked with, I know I love them, and they're ready to put the temple up.
All the bullying over the years, all the anti-Israel stuff, all of it is all part of a larger globalist UN, Sorosian program, and the Vatican is heavily involved, and they want the UN to come in and take over that holy city. Talk about bringing in revelation. You know, maybe I just don't want revelation to come in that quick. I got a 1-year-old daughter. I got 3 other children I love. Maybe I just don't like seeing it fulfilled, to have the Babylon whore and the false prophet in control of Jerusalem. Maybe just at a deep level, I don't like the UN taking control of Israel. Because that's the thing. That's who's going to take it over. And then they're going to start even bigger wars. You'll never satisfy the so-called Palestinians. The Arab countries won't take one of them. What does that tell you? Because everywhere you take them in, they try to overthrow you. It's what they do. And you know what they do to holy sites? They blow each other's holy sites up. So you let unfettered Islamic takeover happen in Jerusalem, guaranteed within 1 year, Dome of the Rock, all of it is going to get blown sky high. Because that's especially what the Wahhabis do.
David Friedman was presented with a photograph of one of the most sacred places in Jerusalem. But the image had been altered to show the Jewish third temple on the site where the Islamic Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are currently situated. The third temple is a biblical reference to a new place of worship, to replace an ancient one which was destroyed. The US embassies asked for an apology, saying the envoy was unaware that he was being given a doctored picture. The region is still reeling from deadly protests against the relocation of the embassy to Jerusalem.
We are in the final days. I believe you're going to hear more talk about the great temple being built in Israel. Do you believe that at all? I didn't ask you ahead of time, so maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly, and there's a push for that. And did you notice that one of the very first things when Trump was elected, the rabbis in Israel calling on him and Putin to use their international clout to do what? To rebuild the temple. Don't think this can't happen. I think impetus is on our side right now. I think we're moving towards a moment. And the rabbis over there, some of what the mystical rabbis are saying is very, very curious right now.
הכנראה שאם מספיק, שהיום כבר כמה שעות בגיל עדיין ליבו, אבל יש עוד כמה שעות, אבל יש להשתדל גם היום.
There have been at least a dozen Jewish rabbis that have said the Messiah is on earth now. He's been identified. He is soon going to make himself known. Well, some key things have to happen for the messianic figure in the Jewish mindset. For the Messiah to arrive, you can't think of him like we think of Messiah. We think of Messiah after the model of Jesus. He's the Son of God, divine birth, all of that. That's not the way the Jews look at the Messiah. They're looking for a king. They're looking for a political leader. As a matter of fact, Messiah to them means the anointed one, and it goes back to the ancient days when they would anoint a king and recognize him as this is the man that God sent. And what they're looking for is several things. First of all, they're looking for somebody in a political figure who can lead decisive battles in defense of Israel. This is why the only politician on the face of the earth that was standing up and saying, if I'm elected president, I'm going to be the biggest friend that Israel's ever had. We're going to undo the Iran deal, well, blah, 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 right? And being a friend of Benjamin Netanyahu.
Donald Trump is going to war for Israel. For Israel. The most incredible things are happening. Never before has a president been so incredibly pro-Israel. God's light is shining on America right now, and it's because Christians stood up and they voted in those polling booths, and also because of Donald Trump's just absolutely incredible stance for Israel, recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal, indivisible capital of Israel.
Secondly, they're looking for, when the Messiah comes, there will be an ingathering of Jews from around the world back into the Holy Land. That's why the rabbis, on the eve of his election, went on television and said, we need to call now Jews from around the world, come back to Jerusalem because the Messiah is here, right?
Yes.
There's another thing. Thirdly, they talk about when he arrives, he is going to reinstitute the temple service. So what was the second thing they did? They called on Trump and Putin to use their power to rebuild the temple and to reinstitute the temple service. I'm not saying that they think he is the Messiah. What I actually think is that most of the rabbis there think he's John the Baptist and the Messiah is about to appear. He's the forerunner. He's the guy that's going to start the message in the wilderness, and the Messiah is going to come in on his heels. And so we need the temple service. We need to get back into Israel, the Messiah. Now, why are they saying that? They have identified somebody. I mean, there could be a few rabbis there that think he's the Messiah. The other third key is he has to be of the Davidic dynasty. He has to be of the Davidic bloodline, and there is an effort right now to go back through the European monarchy, cousins of President Donald Trump, to show that his bloodline goes back to the Davidic dynasty. Now, why are these efforts underway? I'm just saying there's something very strange here that's going on, and everything I'm saying can be verified. Multiple news agencies, the Jerusalem Post, Breaking Israel News, they're all talking about this right now. So they too believe that we are in the end times. They too believe that the Messiah is about to appear. We would say the second coming is about to happen, but their Messiah is going to be a false Messiah. He's going to be the Antichrist, right? So I think that the smart ones in Israel are looking at him right now. They're saying he is God's what we would call John the Baptist. He is God's messenger. When he takes over in January, there is a 5777 countdown to the appearance of the Messiah, and something could happen overnight that could lead to the reconstruction of the temple.
After 70 AD, the Jews were scattered throughout all of the world, and there came a time when Jews were not even allowed to live or visit Jerusalem. They've wanted, of course, to rebuild their temple, and thanks to the Temple Institute, which is just behind us, all the plans are already made. The sacrificial altar has been recently constructed. The priest robes have been made. Pretty much everything is ready to go.
Robert, help us understand, why is it so important to the Jewish religion to rebuild their temple? What is the significance of the temple to them?
Well, Chris, there's many important reasons, but the primary reason, the number one reason, is the Jewish people do not believe their Messiah will arrive until that temple is rebuilt.
There's a rumor afoot that the Jewish people, the Israelis, are planning to rebuild the temple, or at least there's a move among them that people want to rebuild the temple. Now, there is no temple, but there are people who want to rebuild the temple. So tell us about it.
Well, on June 7th in 1967, Israeli forces captured the city of Jerusalem in what was called the Six-Day War. After nearly 2,000 years of exile, the Jewish people were close to their dream of a new temple. But that dream lasted just a few days. The Temple Mount was later returned to Muslim authorities, and 4 decades later, Jews are still forbidden to worship there. But that hasn't stopped some people from making plans to build the next temple.
Every day, 3 times a day, Jews recite this prayer: "May it be your will that the temple be speedily rebuilt in our own time." It's a prayer they prayed for almost 2,000 years.
But Jews here in Jerusalem are doing more than just praying. Just a few steps away from the Western Wall, rabbis and craftsmen are building what they call a temple in waiting.
We're supposed to build a temple, and nothing about that changed. Nothing about that commandment changed.
Chaim Richman is a director at the Temple Institute in Jerusalem.
The Temple Institute is actively engaged in research and preparation for the resumption of the service in the Holy Temple, to the extent of actually preparing operational blueprints for the construction of the temple according to the most modern standards.
This menorah is just one of several vessels created for the next temple. It's covered with 95 pounds of pure gold and has a price tag of $2 million.
Piece by piece, the third temple is taking shape, with priest garments, vessels of copper, gold, and silver, and a new generation of Levite priests, specially trained for temple service.
We have enough in place now to resume the divine service and to build the temple. But obviously, a lot of things have to happen in order for this to happen.
Richmond isn't the only one who's ready to rebuild.
You actually have blueprints, architectural drawings for the third temple?
3,000 years after King Solomon built the first Jewish temple, another Solomon is laying the foundations for the third.
From the womb of my mother, I have a task and a mission in my life, which is connected with the rebirth of Israel.
Gershon Solomon leads a group called the Temple Mount Faithful. They commissioned these cornerstones for the third temple. The 6-ton stones were consecrated with water from the biblical pool of Siloam and cut with diamonds.
By the rivers of Babylon, we wept as we remembered Zion. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill.
The miraculous rebirth of our nation. And we look ahead with pride to the remarkable contributions Israel will continue to make to all nations.
The Jewish people shine as a light to all nations.
You know, in the end, after we build our big בית מקדש, המטרה הגדולה היא להיות אור לגויים.
When the Messiah comes, that non-Jews will end up being like slaves to Jews and things like that. Is that part of, like, where does that come from?
What you're saying is correct. What you're saying is correct.
And what does it mean?
יעבדוך עמים, ישתחוו לחלומי, יעבדוך עמים. It says here, יעבדוך עמים. The lands will work for you. יעבדוך עמים.
Do you believe that the Gentiles, the Goyim, will one day become the slaves of the Jews?
So I believe it's part of the Torah.
Okay.
And they don't want a Jewish person to work.
אתה חושב שהגויים יהיו עבדים של היהודים יום אחד?
אמורים להיות.
אוקיי, מה זאת אומרת? כאילו, אמורים להיות.
לפי מה שכתוב בתורה, הגויים אמורים להיות העבדים שלנו.
אוקיי.
העם היהודי היה במשך כל השנים העם הכי נרדף. מצד שני, כשמשיח יבוא, הוא יהיה העם הכי נבחר אחרי כל מה שקרה במשך כל השנים.
האם אתה מאמין שהגויים יהיו עבדים של היהודים יום אחד?
כן.
אוקיי, ומה זה אומר? כן? ומה כתוב? כתוב בפירוש שהגויים יהיו עבדים שלנו?
אני אומר, כתוב אחרי ביאת המשיח, אני לא יכול להביא את הפסוק המדויק, אבל כתוב שאחרי ביאת המשיח יהיה מלחמה מאוד מאוד גדולה, ובסופו של דבר כן, הגויים יהיו עבדים של היהודים במשך תקופה, ואחרי זה העולם יחזור כאילו לקדמותו. זה מה שאני...
אוקיי.
על כל... טוב, אני לא עוד פעם להביא את המספר המדויק, על כל יהודי אמור להיות 800 או יותר עבדים.
This is my land, you
This is not your land, it belongs to these families.
land, you son of a bitch. I'm gonna kill you and the Palestinians. This is my land. God gave it to me. Nazi.